Hey everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to do a constructed set review for the blue cards in Phyrexia All Be One. Now I will not be rating these cards 1 through 5 or 1 through 10. Instead, I'm just going to go over the cards that I think are going to make a splash in a constructed format and just talk about their implications, because Magic's a more complex game than just rating how good cards are. Let's do it. Jace the Perfected Mind is 2, 1 blue, and 1 Phyrexian blue, and is completed. So if you pay the Phyrexian blue with life instead of mana, then it'll enter with 2 less loyalty counters. At full retail, enters with 5 loyalty counters. Jace's +1 is until your next turn. Up to 1 target creature gets -3, -0. His -2 is target player mills 3 cards. Then if a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, you draw 3 cards. Otherwise, you draw a card. And his -X is target player mills 3 times X cards. So this, there's a couple layers to if a Planeswalker is good. One, can it protect itself? Jace can kind of protect itself. It doesn't make a blocker, but it makes something smaller. So if you're facing down 1 smaller creature, Jace can protect himself. But the ability to, reasonably easily draw 3 cards is kind of cool. So I feel like this card could fit into, the modern mill deck pretty easily, right? Your opponent on the norm has 20 or more cards in their graveyard, and being able to draw 3 cards and just, finish them off. I could totally see this happening. And even just the mill 3 cards, you draw a card mode on it is already, pretty good in that mill deck. Where I see this making a splash in, Standard or maybe Pioneer are, self-mill decks and, self-graveyard decks. Maybe Esper Greasefang could come back with this card. Or that blue-black, Thassa's Oracle combo deck in Pioneer, this could find its way in. Now, I don't think this card's going to be a menace, and I don't think this card is going to create any new archetypes, but I could see it wiggling its way into some existing ones. Ichor Gauntlet is a 3 mana, 2 generic, 1 blue artifact that says Planeswalkers you control have 0 loyalty proliferate and -12 loyalty, take an extra turn after this one. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, choose a counter on target permanent, put an additional counter of that kind on that permanent. This really feels like a Super Friends enabler to me. 0 proliferate really means +1 proliferate everything else. That's already great. -12, take an extra turn after this one. If you have Ichor Gauntlet and set up a bunch of Planeswalkers and then inside a control shell, other than that, you just win, right? It's absolutely crazy. So I could totally see a Super Friends deck popping up in either Standard or Pioneer through Ichor Gauntlet. Tekethal Inquiry Dominus is 2 mana, 2 blue, 3/5 flyer. If you would proliferate twice instead, and you can pay 1 and 2 Phyrexian blue to remove 3 counters from among other target artifact, creatures, and planeswalkers you control to put an indestructible counter on Tekethal. This feels like one of the worst gods, in my opinion, unless you're within the context of a control proliferate deck. In order for this card to be good, that deck needs to be good, I think. I don't think this card is going to exist within many other shells. Though, sweet EDH card. Mind Splice Apparatus is 3 generic and 1 blue, 4 total. As an artifact with flash, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you can put an oil counter on Mind Spike Apparatus. And instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each oil counter on Mind Spike Apparatus. This is super sweet in a blue flash deck alongside counter spells and draw spells and things that you want to get cheaper. I think it's going to wiggle its way into that in Standard and maybe even Pioneer. Especially in decks that want to cast a ton of spells in the same turn, it's going to find its way into those strategies. Blue Sun's Twilight is X and 2 blue sorcery. Gain control of target creature with mana value X or less. If X is 5 or more, create a token with a copy of that creature. This is going to exist as a 1 or 2 of in really, really slow decks, or maybe in the sideboard of blue mid-range decks, just to take your opponent's win condition. It's not going to be super, super prominent, but effects like this have always existed in that context. But the X is 5 or more, create a copy of that creature is kind of disgusting and will definitely end games. This is definitely an eye roll. Yeah, you drew your 1 or 2 of kind of card. Blade of Shared Souls is a 2 generic, 1 blue artifact equipment. Has 4 Mirrodin, so when it enters the battlefield, a 2/2 will be created that is attached to this equipment. And whenever Blade of Shared Souls become attached to a creature, for as long as Blade of Shared Souls remains attached to it, you may have that creature become a copy of target creature you control. Now, this has a lot of corner case implications. The unfortunate thing about this card is the 2/2 is created, and then Blade of Shared Souls attaches to the 2/2, and thus, when it attaches, then it becomes copy of something else. So you don't get the enter the battlefield effects that you would with Phantasmal Image or something. But it's totally possible this card will find a similar role as Phantasmal Image. And in some ways, it's more powerful, being able to copy things over and over. You just don't get the end of the battlefield effects. Inktus, Grand Metatect, I think, is 2 blue, 1 generic, 2/4. Other blue creatures you control have, whenever the creature becomes tapped, draw a card, then discard a card. Other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1, so we have a true artifact lord, so that's dope. And you can pay a Phyrexian blue until end of turn. Target creature you control becomes a blue artifact in addition to its other colors and types. Activate only as a sorcery. So, I mean, I could see an artifact aggro deck on the back of this. I could see a mono blue aggro deck on the back of this. I think this card is extremely powerful, and I'm really excited to see it explored. Mercurial Spell Dancer is a 1 generic, 1 blue, 2/1 that can't be blocked. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on it, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may remove two oil counters from it, and if you do, when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. I could see this card existing in some sort of Delver strategy in like Standard. It's probably not powerful enough for Pioneer and on. But playing this card, like, you know, you jamming in, like doing your own thing, 2 every single turn, like, and then eventually, like once in a while, it'll like copy a Consider or like whatever. Like, I think a Delver strategy surrounded it could be pretty okay. Might not be powerful enough. Minor Misstep is 1 blue instant, counter target spelled, mana value 1 or less. This card caused so much havoc on Twitter when it was spoiled. This card, depending on who you talk to, this card will either break Vintage and break Legacy, or it will just not be played at all. I'm excited to see how this plays out. I could see it be a player in Vintage or Legacy. It's the fact it says 1 or less means you can hit like Mana Crypts and Moxes and Vintage. You know, we'll see. We'll see. You know, they're comparing it to Mental Misstep, which is a Phyrexian blue and does a similar thing. But it being free and costing 1 is a giant gap. And I think we need to remember that. Distorted Curiosity is 2 generic, 1 blue. Sorcery Corrupted. The spell costs 2 less to cast, so it'll be 1 mana if opponent has 3 or more poison counters, and it's draw 2 cards. If the good Toxic deck is blue, this card's going to play it, right? 1 mana, draw 2 cards. That's amazing. It's so good. Thrumming Bird is a 2 mana, 1 generic, 1 blue, 1/1 flyer, and when it deals combat damage to a player, proliferate. If proliferate decks exist, this card's going to be played in it. That's very, very powerful. This could also be played in like the blue Toxic decks, like just as a like hit you do the thing situation, so we'll see. Bring the Ending is a 1 generic, 1 blue instant, counter target spell unless this controller plays 2, and that's corrupted, so if opponent has 3 or more poison counters, it says counter that spell, period. This is actually really powerful, especially in the Toxic decks, if the Toxic decks end up being blue. Like, first off, it's like a slightly worse mana leak, which is fine. And it has Corrupted, it's just it's just literally just better counterspell. Like, that's incredible. It's incredible. Experimental Augury is a 1 generic, 1 blue instant. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, the rest of the bottom of your library in any order, and then proliferate. This card's great. We're already playing effects like Impulse in Standard, and this one can just be better if you have anything to proliferate. Prologue to Phyrexia is 1 generic, 1 blue instant. Each opponent gains a poison counter and draw a card. Obviously, you're going to be playing this in your blue Toxic decks. It cantrips, it's instant speed, so you can leave mana up and just do it with your free mana, and just each opponent gets a poison counter. You don't even need to work for it. Like, absolutely. So those are the cards in blue that I think are going to be making a splash in Constructed from Phyrexia All Will Be One. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.